So I wanted to talk to you about movement and the intentionality of it. Like I said a few weeks ago, I was asking for ideas, and I think I came up with a few things. So I do want to bring two things up. One from the individual, global individual, meaning, for example, from the municipality, provincial. As from that lens, I think that we are all attempting to add movement into the way we are doing new parks, our streets, because we all inherently know that there is a obese epidemic. Now, in terms of what I think under those years, more like cities or older cities are more prone to walking, like I mentioned to you in Lima, for example, and specifically Cusco is up hills, down hills, and you have a lot of 70-year-old people or 80-year-old people, while the population is young, but older people are actually able to walk no problem up and down streets. Now the city itself is really built to because it has no choice, but yes, it's built for some sort of movement, so you can get up and walk and see faster and easier. So Lima's sort of similar in that term because it's an older city. Now the city like London, Ontario, for example, right now it's more optimal for driving. It's more convenient. So while having said that, of course, there's strategies happening around Ontario in order to promote more movement, parks, bike lanes, and more trails and things like that to allow for people to do movement with less cost. Still, we have the same problem. We're not moving. So that brings me to the individual level. Why aren't we moving, even though there's free YouTubes, there's the street outside, and it doesn't cost anything? I think, in my humble opinion, I think that our lives are very busy, and there's times and places for things. For example, when I had the babies, my boys were babies, that did not really allow for me to get up and walk outside in terms of, what their needs were, and their needs were outweighed in mine at some point because they're babies, they're vulnerable. So going back to the conversation of the individual aspect of it, how do we add movement to our lives? I think we do within the scope of what's happening in our lives. So there's a time and place, and sometimes we won't move as much, and others we will. So I think that there's also, having said that, I think there's also something to be said about intentional movement, right? How do we do that? I don't know, I don't have the answer. But what I want to do today is just show you some of my favorite things that I did in Lima that were more like active base. Sorry, not Lima, Peru. And I want to sort of maybe have a conversation about how we can add movement at every aspect of our lives, including vacation, where we are not necessarily just moving for the sake of moving, but more being present. Because I think at the end of the day, movement should involve presence, being there, doing something other than going into watching a movie, which is enjoyable. I do it all the time, or being online, Facebook, seeing what other people do, TikTok, things like that. I think there's something to be said about taking breaks from that and being present. And while you're present, moving your body intentionally in order to observe the now. I think that is what is called for. So here we are. I'm gonna include some aspects of what we did, and I'll give you a little narrative of what happened just for fun, just so you can get an idea of whether movement happens intentionally or not intentionally or whatnot. Is we need to try every day to move, and how we can, that's up to you. It's so individual. For example, today I don't feel like doing anything but lightly walk, and that's what I'll do. So here we are in Huacachina, which is oasis in the middle of sand dunes, and it has a little pond, and everything else is just sand. I think that for me, doing these little activities at that time was really valuable, because I got to spend a lot of time with my boys and to actually understand their way of thinking and their way they navigate the world in terms of how they add movement themselves. To be honest with you, there were aspects of it that were scary, but at the same time really exhilarating. I think the key thing here, like I mentioned to you before, is presence. I was present in that activity, and I was fully engaged in looking at my boys and doing what they were doing, and asking questions, and enjoying the moment. And I think there's always a lot to be said about actually being in that sphere where you have moments with people that you love and you spend your time with. This is one of the things that I enjoyed in my trip, and this specific trip was amazing in terms of how do I explore my culture, how do I explore the way I want to live, and how do I explore being present when is most of the time when is warranted, and especially with my voice, with the people I love. On that note, I wanted to show you a few pictures of Cusco and how hilly it is. So there's a lot of climbing in Cusco instead of just flat areas. Have a good one.